we could probably talk first maybe about how you guys know each other.
Yeah, sure. So you did my lab.
I did.
I think it was in 2024.
Gosh, was it
I
20 years
think
ago?
so.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's gone so quick.
Yeah.
It was great, yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
It was good.
I was getting the updates.
Yeah, every week I'd come back with an update. Oh my God, we did this play.
Oh, really?
She was very inspired, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, your feedback was so great. I've used it ever since.
Oh, I'm
The
glad.
tools, yeah.
How long have you been doing the
glad.
lab for now?
It's going to be 3 years old in April.
And was
April
it
7th.
was it an idea that you had for a while, or what's the...
No. So what happened was, so kind of a long story, but I'll make it short. So my ex was my producer and we broke up. And
As you do.
As you do.
As you do. And it was a long relationship. And I used to study with Judith Weston, whose method I used to teach. And she's like my mom, my film mom, my godmother. And I called her and I was complaining about the fact that there wasn't a tribe here. And I really wanted that sense of community when I lived in LA and I was working with her and participating in her lab. And she said, why don't you do the lab in London? And I was like, no, I'm not you. I can't do that. And I sat on it for like a year because I could hear her say you'd be really good at it. And so I decided to go for it. And the first one, I spoke to her first. And it was just going to be beta, like a beta version. And it was really successful. So we kept going, and it's going to be 3 years old.
There's nothing like it, like especially when you're directing. You obviously know the basic tools about direction, but the structure of it, the tools that you get from it, instantly make a massive difference in terms of how you interact with actors. It's like an accelerated version of film school for directors.
Well, you don't get that in film school.
Very
so, which is why how I found Judith, because I wasn't getting that in film school, and I was really frustrated. And I found out about her, and then when I moved to LA, I started doing the lab. Consistently, I did it for 12 years.
It's amazing. Some of the actors in it have gone on to do great things.
Yeah.
So, same with the directors. So it's not like something you just play with. It's really incredible.
So Mandi Riggi is somebody who supports the development of
The next wave of directors, I would say.
But who is Mandi Riggi actually?
Who is Mandi Riggi actually? I have a story.
A very interesting story, which is why you're here.
Yeah. So I'm Iranian-American British. And I grew up in England and moved to America when I was 14. Both my parents are Persian. And my dad was an activist. My mom didn't really like that too much about him, but you know, she put up with it. And my dad is Sunni Muslim, and my mom is Jewish. So I come from a very mixed background. Yeah.
That's very interesting that you said that about your mum putting up with it. We can come back to this a bit later, but I do think that there is this... Activists are quite difficult people. You have to be quite difficult to be an activist because you have to be willing to put a lot on the line for, what you
But also with what's going on today, I mean, I can see why she didn't like it. I mean...
There's been a big, long and big
it makes
build-up.
sense.
Yeah, I would say she was probably afraid for our lives, you know, because he was very active. And prior to the revolution of 1979, he was a member of parliament. He was, you know, he did a lot. You know, at one point, he was a mayor of Abadan at age 30, which makes me feel like I'm not worthy. You know, so he's done a lot. And his number one mission really ever since he left was to get rid of this regime. So what's happening now is really alive for me. because he's passed, obviously. He passed away in 2016. So, but he's with me every day, and his mission has been with me every day.
And it's just fresh reminders, I guess, especially now, but, in the last few years of the kind of the work that he's been, putting into this. I think this is what happens during any kind of revolution or big moment. If you're sitting abroad, there's not really an intimate understanding of the journey that country has taken, the intricacies, the nuances. Iran is a very diverse country as well, which is...
Yeah, very, very diverse. There's Jews, there's Armenians, there's Baha'i. I mean, these are religious groups that I'm talking about, but it's a very tribal country. So, for example, I didn't mention my dad is Baluchi. So he comes from the southeast part of Iran, and he comes from a very big tribe. And and he was a representative of that tribe. And so it's, Iran is rich. It's rich in terms of culture.
I did read something recently where all Persians are Iranian, but not all Iranians are Persian.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for a place?
I have to, honestly, I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend that I know, because I've heard the same thing and I'm really confused. But I call myself Persian, and I have called myself Persian since I was little. So.
Yeah. I do think, the way we talk about diversity these days feels not very diverse, and I don't really know how to say that. I think when people think of diversity, they think of very stiff, rigid identities mixed together, as opposed to identities themselves being fluid, which if you are from, the region or the world that you are from, if you're Jewish, even if you're African, or if you're Black, being African and Caribbean is a very different experience, but it's been kind of homogenized. So what would you say, if you could give us a kind of succinct chronology of your life, what would you say some kind of defining moments are, and what made you the person you are today?
I guess defining moment was birth.
No, but it is interesting because it's interesting. Obviously, your dad is Sunni Muslim, your mum is Jewish. So how did they meet, and how did you end up
I think
here?
they actually originally met in Birmingham, where my mom went to university, and my dad came to do a lecture or something.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
But that's when they first met, and I think it was a big deal that my dad was coming to this university, and, amongst
very
the
bohemian
Persians, who were attending, and she was much younger than my dad. And then my mom lived in Germany, actually, and she decided to go to Iran for the summer.
What year would this have been?
I have no idea. You got me there. And obviously pre-revolution. Yeah. And she started working at this, I think, oil company, because my dad did work for the oil company as well. And I think that's when they got together, I don't think she was planning on staying in Iran.
Okay. So were you raised here, or were you raised back in Iran, or were you raised in Germany?
No, I wasn't raised in Germany. I was raised here and then America.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So really transatlantic.
Yeah, I did go to Germany a bit here and there, but not.
So did you have a firm footing anywhere? Like in your, as a child, you're very much your environment, aren't you?
So I think because I was also sent off to boarding school, and I don't feel a sense of identity, and this is something that I struggle with quite a bit, because am I Iranian, am I American, am I British, and where am I from? Where is home really? And it's interesting because of everything that's going on right now, even though I don't really, I didn't grow up in Tehran really. But for some reason, I have this, it's, I'm connected to it in a really big way, and it feels like home. And I don't know if I'm deluding myself or anything, but it's interesting.
But it makes sense. I mean, for me, my parents are Ghanaian, and I didn't grow up in Ghana.
Yeah.
But I have this really strong affiliation of Ghana. I think it's only recently I'm coming to terms with this idea of being British, really trying to reconcile this cohesiveness between Ghanaian and being British. And I think there is something about being a first generation, second generation migrant here, and trying to reconcile the fact that actually people will recognize that you are British, whether you like it or not. But also there's a strong part of you that was raised by the culture of your parents that defines you.
Yeah.
It's trying to wrap those all together, and you're half Jewish, half Iranian.
Yeah.
Born here and born in the US. It's a multitude of identities that you're trying to grapple with.
Would you call, how would you actually frame that? Would you say
I'm fully Iranian
Fully?
in terms of my parents. It doesn't matter if one's Jewish and the other one isn't.
Okay,
So they call themselves Iranian. So my mother, even though she's Jewish, she's Iranian first.
Okay.
And then you'd
Or
be
Persian first.
You'd be fully Jewish as well then, as your
Yeah.
mother is Jewish, yeah. So when you and I think this is what's interesting as well, is when you sit in like the completeness of identities. I always think that being mixed, whether that's mixed heritage or mixed culture, gives you an understanding of identity in a way that can't really be diluted. You are all of these aspects of yourself completely. Not then, they work in harmony together as opposed to being at odds with each other. And when you can kind of feel that, I think it can be quite healing in some ways, and also make you perceive questions about race and culture in a very different way to how the mainstream tries to get us to feel about it.
It's true. I do feel like as I got older, I came to terms with that question of identity, whereas when I was much younger, I was afraid to, or I was confused, or I really grappled with with what happened in Iran, and like, because I also moved to America, I didn't know if I was British. I didn't, I had an English accent at the time.
Really? Did you?
And I was like, I need to acclimate as soon as possible and take on an American accent because, I need to belong.
Yeah.
So I don't think I feel that way anymore. Like I need to belong. I don't know. Maybe I do. I don't know.
Don't worry, this isn't therapy. You don't have to answer the question now.
And how about with your British identity? Do you feel, because I guess this is the question that we've sort of been asking ourselves as we've grown a little bit older, our relationship to our Britishness has kind of shifted. Mm-hmm. So how would you say your relationship is with your British identity?
Well, it's interesting because the reason why I came back was twofold. One, I was writing a film about a British-Iranian-Jewish family living in Hampstead, and I wanted to be in London doing it.
Yeah.
And when my father passed away in 2016, I felt this draw because there was a real closeness I had with him as a child in London, and London was his favorite city. And I felt like I needed to come here to be with him. It's bizarre, but it was maybe part of the process of grieving, but I really believed it.
I mean, so he spent a lot of time in London?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess...
He went to school in England.
Yeah. And I guess it is there is something about this country and this city about, and a lot of the conversation gets... we get kind of consumed with racism for good reason, obviously. But this is, I guess, also a country that represented opportunity and you know, people being able to overcome certain racial, cultural barriers. Like in a lot of ways, I think this country was quite neutral in a good way, because people could create their own stories, and, you know, this was the center of democracy, and a lot of, especially like the cultured, you know, literati in the 60s, I think this would have been, you know, a very important place mentally, as well as, you know, being able to be yourself.
100%. I think there is a danger now that we're losing that.
Yeah.
And that's something that we really need to be cautious about.
Yeah. So how have you found the film industry?
I feel, to be honest, it's a small pond.
Yeah.
I struggle more here. I struggle to find community here.
Yeah.
So I built my own.
Yeah.
And still building it. And in terms of, I just feel it's more difficult to get films made and off the ground in the UK and
Than America.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Well, I saw a recent stat by BBC that says 65% of the funding comes from the US into the UK.
Right.
I think most of the funding in the UK usually comes from BFI, typically, or some of the major streams. And when we think about the recent way that film is going, it's largely streaming, so it's like Netflix and Apple and Amazon. So the traditional cinema opportunities aren't
they're
not really that there. They're from major studios like Barbie and Wicked and things of that nature. So for the independent, it is very hard to try and make a footing in a place where you don't have any access to those who really commission those films. You're very, very far removed.
Yeah, and I think another issue really is that UK producers are always looking to Channel 4, BBC or BFI for funding, and they don't really know how to raise money outside of that box, you know, and that's troubling because that's shrinking. The funds are shrinking, or I mean, they've shrunk.
Yeah, I mean, since the writer's strike, it's been turmoil, really.
Yeah. So.
And in terms of, okay, so you have like shrinking funding, and speaking of boxes, because I found this trying to navigate the creative industries over the last decade or so, it's not just the money, it's how you pitch yourself. It's how you pitch your identity, because everything has to be...
This is a good point.
Everything has to be, you know, relevant.
This is very true.
This idea of, like, I think, victimizing yourself in some way.
No, I agree.
And the right victim.
Yeah, it's definitely
not just victimizing yourself.
Yeah, it's true.
Are you the right victim for this, to tell the story?
Yeah.
Do you tick all the right boxes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you noticed that kind of happening?
100%. I've been told that, I mean, sell your Muslim side, as opposed to your Jewish
that is so
heritage.
And why do you think that is? Like, why do you think the creative industry is more concerned about your Muslim side than your Jewish side?
I think it has to do with where society has been heading. There's a backlash, obviously, for everything that's been happening politically. And we're just not cool enough, you know.
Well, I think
suffering from an uncool problem.
well, yeah. I think being white is not cool, and I think the perception is that most Jews are white. You're just on the wrong side of the shade spectrum, unfortunately. I think is a perception.
But this is like the whole issue, isn't it? It's Jews are told what they are and what they look like, and you know how they fit into society. Jews are, you know, being a total global minority, let alone a national minority. I'm not actually sure prior to the revolution, how many Jews were?
So lots. I don't know the figure exactly, but lots of Jews. And they're mostly, you know, out of the country now. there's a big concentration in America, Canada, here too, but yeah, everybody left.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know those numbers accurately.
And I also think when we say lots, I think there was more, but I think going back to this point around why you're being pushed to represent one side more than the other, I think there's this idea that Jews aren't an oppressed community. I think that particularly amongst black people is certainly the impression.
There's a big
that
problem.
Jews will kind of rule the world is
minorities always are sometimes like I find the worst culprits in terms of saying what another minority is. So Jews being a minority within other minorities aren't allowed to have agency in terms of how we represent ourselves, for example.
I think so. And I think terms like typically amongst our circle of friends is a lot of POC. So we're just one big global majority. That's a common term that we use quite a bit, is the global majority.
That's true.
And I think we've lost the nuance in the fact that all of our stories are different. And we need to take time to understand that each of us are going to go through an individual, unique experience that isn't going to be the same as somebody else's. Even two Ghanaian folk are not going to be the same. That's something that we've missed in the conversation. And because, like I said before, the impression from, particularly in the music industries where I hear about it a lot, you hear some of those stories around artists in horrible contracts and, the label was run by a Jewish person, so Jews rule the world. That was a sweeping narrative that I think a lot of minorities believe, as opposed to the story.
And I think it really is. It is that it's like we were fed conspiracies at school. But what I'm interested in as well is like with Jews, how did Jews become so like bottom of the barrel in terms of those kind of conspiracies were never pushed back on. There was no one to ever like defend the Jewish identity, and I think a lot of, because we didn't know you were Jewish, we had to ask. Yeah. And a lot of our Jewish friends, it's the same. Like I always find, especially since October 7th, I always ask if I have a feeling. I'll make a point to kind of ask if someone's Jewish now, because there's just this, this feeling of having to protect that side of yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of shame in being Jewish, I find. It's like a part of you have to hide, which I think is quite sad. It's quite a sad thing.
It's more fear than shame. I think it's more fear.
I think it's more fear as well. And also, it may be a little bit of shame, but I think it's mostly fear, because then you're not liked or immediately you're judged, and we are in a society where, being liked is a big deal.
It's important. It's led us to this entire problem really now, hasn't it, of people wanting to be liked and accepted into a particular kind of tribe rather than have an original thought really, or apply critical thinking to a problem. So obviously we're celebrating Khomeini is dead.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yes.
But how would you say the last few years have been for you? Since Women, Life, Freedom or before, up until now, how would you say you have found your immediate community and, those in your wider circle of contact, of contact? How has it felt to be Iranian, to be Jewish, and have you felt supported? Have you felt understood?
Supported by Iranians and Persians. The diaspora is really strong, especially right now. But there has always been, the issue is that there's always been kind of infighting and judging each other and looking each other up and down. And this is the first time I've actually felt that there's a unification.
Oh, really?
Yes.
This is the first time you felt it? That's amazing.
I think there was a unification during Mahsa Amini and Women, Life, Freedom. But I think this is much, much stronger. Whereas people are, not judging each other so much and actually really realizing that they're on the same team.
And what do you think has been the biggest shift then?
I think that this is a revolution.
Yeah.
Let's call it, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Whereas before there were uprisings and they were immediately, gotten rid of. But in this case, I think the regime really made a really very big mistake.
Yeah.
Because they killed so many people in 10 hours.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? 10 hours.
No, I can't. I genuinely can't imagine.
It has been shocking to, I mean, obviously October 7th was a big kind of moment for many Jews and many people who I think are, who understand how justice should be enforced or executed, because I think this is, for me, the biggest kind of learning process has been people don't understand conflict. They don't understand that there are rules in war, and they don't understand that not everybody has this very black and white view of oppressor and oppressed. But definitely the last few years have been so interesting because, especially with Iran, I think it's a very clear-cut case of a serious injustice being done from a regime onto its people.
Yeah.
But there's a certain crowd who haven't been able to reconcile that with their worldview. And it's been so confusing or surprising. And it, I think as someone with Jewish heritage, it's been very lonely. But I can imagine having, being Iranian, being Jewish, that has been especially isolating.
You mean this moment or?
Well, prior to this moment,
yes.
Yeah.
Prior to this moment, after October 7th, I was not so forthcoming about being Jewish. And after I did mention I was Jewish, there were people who distanced themselves from me, which made me pull back, and not mention, and again, not really shame, but just, I don't know. It felt like I had to hide.
It's a weird feeling.
Yeah. We're protected.
Yeah.
And
it's really like not a nice feeling as well to double think what you say to people, because there is a bit of, I find if I don't mention something in a moment, there's a bit of guilt, maybe not shame initially, but there's a bit of guilt that precedes that maybe I didn't defend myself or, my people, right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that can be quite painful.
I agree. I think I'm glad that the diaspora has been supportive.
Yeah.
Because I think it's surprising to me the effort that Iranians are having to go to garner wider support. So I do find that interesting to observe. I don't like the word interesting. I do find it frustrating to observe as somebody who's not even Iranian that there's not this kind of global support for this particular atrocity as there has been for others, particularly in Britain, who are celebrators of freedom. That has surprised me.
Well, let's be direct about it. We don't have to beat around the bush, but I'm just going to say the Iranian regime was supporting Palestine, and supporting the terrorists, Hezbollah and Hamas, and so that's what it is.
But this is what, absolutely. Like, I think this is, it's crazy that these very fierce pro-Palestine, it's also for that we've come to this like pro-Palestine, pro-Israel dichotomy. People don't realize that you free Palestine by addressing Iran and its proxies, but it's why? I think it can't be a majority of people who feel this way. Most Britons, just kind of want to get on, and most Britons aren't going to be, would rather us talk about domestic issues than what's happening in the Middle East. So why is it that such, a small minority of people are so loud and so effective at getting policy misdirected away from domestic issues to a war where there is a clear oppressive force, which is Iran, and clear victims who are the Iranians, who are Israelis, who are Yemenis, who are people in the Syrians, people living in the Middle East, who all are feeling this effect? Why is it that such a small, and they tend to be a lot often in the creative industries? What is that? There's like a weird power game that's happened over the last few years, where a lot of people in the creative industry specifically are anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic, very pro-left, and their voice is extremely loud and effective.
And they're pawns.
They are
Sorry,
pawns.
They're pawns. And they're misinformed, and they don't even understand the history, and they don't, they're in a bubble, they're in a bubble with each other, and they are loud.
I agree. I think Britain has a long and complex history, and there's a lot of anti-Western thought that's wrapped within that. So I think the pro-revolutionists in Iran, the pro-revolutionists in Iran associates itself with the likes of US and Western values, which a lot of people will always criticize because of it's linked to colonial rule, imperialism. For them, it's a very simple narrative. Again, for me, the nuance in that is simply missing. This is very simple. The black and white is obvious in this sentiment.
Your dad must have been very pro-West, I guess, in some ways, would you say?
Pro-freedom, surely.
I think he was pro-freedom and pro-Iran, actually.
So my question is, what is your kind of relationship with we've spoken a little bit about it, but what is your relationship creatively, I guess, with this country and politically?
Right, we didn't finish talking about
that.
My relationship with this country in terms of identity.
Yeah, because what kind of drives your work? I think it's quite difficult as a creative. I mean, you don't have to be making work about your life, but it's difficult, especially having such a background as like you, for that to not come into your work somehow.
So, funny enough, the only thing that I've ever written, because I'm a writer, director, and playwright, about my culture was the film that I was telling you about the British-Iranian-Jewish family in Hampstead. And I found writing it was I was dealing with the grief of losing my dad, so it was it's a lot about that. I can't make that film right now because it's about Jews.
Just simply because it's about Jews.
I was told by someone that I should switch them to Muslim to get it made.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I think this is why I'm so interested in the creative industry and its role in the wider picture of anti-Semitism in this country. The reason why we started this project is because we were really interested in communication, the act of communicating itself, which the creative industry essentially is. Art and creativity is just a means of communicating. So if the mediums that we consume and the content that it produces is created by anti-Semites or people who simply just don't understand the Jewish history and struggle, then of course what people are going to be you know, it's a very powerful, even if it's a small minority, even if the creative industry doesn't represent, you know, like a huge part of British industry, it's still going to be seeping into people's minds.
Yeah,
constantly.
media is powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely, media is powerful. It's one of the easiest ways to shape a narrative is through media and entertainment. That's why it's so powerful.
And this idea that Jews run the media, but then as a Jewish film director, you're being told that this story can't be told. How does that make sense?
It's unfortunate, but I was told that, and I'm having difficulty raising money for it right now. And if the only way to get funding is through a BFI or a BBC or a Channel 4, forget it.
Yeah, I think it's that. And I think personally, when I was making film, I certainly felt this pressure to make a certain type of narrative, which I was like, I'm not doing. I don't want to leave my identity of being queer. That's just like, that's just not who I am. That's not the stories I want to tell. And I think we do forget that the arts is an elite space. It's made by individuals who I would classify in the activism or politically as allies, who are typically white, middle class, who on the face of it are well-meaning, but have, lost the ability to really think critically, or lost the braveness to be able to be honest about the fact that I can reconcile my own identity and also still think clearly and critically about what's going on over here without having to try and unintentionally shape and force the narratives of how you see other identities, you know?
Some of them are they want to do good, and the other half are guilty.
Yeah.
And they're just so, they experience a lot of shame.
Poor you.
Yeah. It's either, poor you, or it's, I don't want to be a bad person. Oh my God, I'm guilty of being white and privileged.
Yeah.
Colonial guilt.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they make up the majority. And this is what I think allies, they remove their power.
I don't like the word ally.
Okay, should we get a new word?
Can we change it?
Okay.
It makes me think of I don't know, like
allies.
It makes me think of comrades.
Comrades.
And it's very Marxist vibes.
That's what it is.
It is.
That is what it is. We gotta call it what it is. I think the allies, they kind of remove.
They see
their
themselves
power.
as allies.
Yeah, they see themselves as allies,
as opposed to just your friend.
Yeah, allowing minorities to lead the conversation, but inadvertently, you are shaping the power of a conversation.
Yeah.
By your allyship.
By saying this is how you need to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Well, it's censorship.
It is censorship. Totally, because it also preserves the hierarchy. It preserves, who gets to say who, what you are, based on your background, based on your how you grew up, based on your ethnicity, and we just keep everything as it is.
And I also think for minorities it's harmful because it perpetuates this idea that you're always going to be oppressed.
Yeah.
And remove this idea that you can ever hold privilege. When I go back to Ghana, it's very humbling because you're quickly reminded that you are privileged. There's no escaping it. My colour and my shade will not remove the fact that I am the privileged one in the conversation. But here, I find that minorities are always oppressed and we're always in some sort of struggle. And for me, that's, again, upheld by these allies, these white allies who always tell you, this is the story you should tell. And, oh, my God, it must be. I get that all the time. It must be so hard for you. If I told somebody I didn't tech, they'd fall over. They would fall over. They would think that I'm having a really hard time. And most of the time, I will just play up to it or not say anything at all because I cannot be bothered to educate the fact that I'm actually doing all right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what would you say, because I want to contextualize even more your approach to directing. What would you say? I know we've spoken a bit about your dad, but are there any specific moments or people, sources of inspiration in your life that have led you into film? Did you grow up with film and the arts, or?
So it's interesting because my dad's an activist and he was in politics, and my mom was very much against me going into the creative industry. They both were. My dad was more of an idealist, so he was more welcoming. But interestingly enough, my mom, even though she didn't want me to touch filmmaking, she loved films. And so I used to have these long conversations with her about classic films.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and even though she she hates the fact that I'm in this industry.
I mean, it's a tough industry, though. It's a tough industry.
It really is. And I'm sure it came from, a good place.
Yeah.
Like you need to, like any good Persian, you need to be a doctor
be a
or a
doctor.
lawyer.
And what kind of films did she like?
These are old classic films like Bogart and, Carol. It's old films.
Mandy, you have to share because you have an archive of films that people should watch. So please just drop a few for us here so we can put us on, please.
Old Casablanca is one of them.
Okay.
Casablanca is a great film. Of course, it's beautiful, and it's do you know what though? I was watching because there is this idea that like classic films, like you have to watch it because it's a classic film, but then they're not all. Like I watched Breakfast at Tiffany's the other day, and I was like, I actually don't love this. There was something about it that I was
because they're holding back.
They're holding back. Yeah,
but
exactly.
I mean, it was the time. I don't think they could really.
But
get
Casablanca
into
doesn't feel like it holds back in the same way. So was it just like Hollywood films you would watch, or was it Hollywood
with my mother? Yeah, old Hollywood films, and I love those.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'll drop another couple. To Be or Not to Be. It's hysterical. It's really great. What else? I'm trying to come up with something that nobody would know, really.
I've not heard of To Be or Not to Be.
No, never have I.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay.
It's really, really great. The Letter with Betty Davis is
I love
fantastic.
Betty Davis.
Yeah.
I've not seen this film either.
I do love her. Whatever Happens to Baby Jane is... See, that doesn't hold back.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing, yeah.
It doesn't. It's amazing. But I'm giving you two titles that are very, not mainstream.
Okay, so we'll watch The Letter and To Be or Not to Be.
It's on the list.
Yeah.
So,
amazing films.
So
one is funny, the other one's,
So would you
melodrama.
say it's your sorry guys, I have to go and give some keys to somebody.
Oh, okay.
I apologise. One
It's
second.
all right.
Hello?
We interrupt this broadcast.
You're rolling.
We are rolling.
You're rolling, okay. So we were talking about film, talking about Hollywood film. So would you say you got into film because of your mum?
Interestingly enough, yes. I originally wanted to be a painter.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I wanted to go to art school. I wanted to be a fine artist, and they wouldn't allow it.
Your parents or
Too far.
My parents.
Too far. Yeah, I see that.
Too far. So I ended up just doing whatever for a year, and then
This was in Britain or
no, this was in America.
This is in America.
I was already there, so uni was America.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to pay for my own schooling, and I went to art school. I went to Pratt.
Oh, you're so naughty. That was brave.
Take matters into my own hands.
I took matters into my own hands. I had a job that paid well.
Oh, that's good. The parents are like that.
Well, they didn't. It was still in the creative art industry, so they didn't appreciate it. They really didn't. And I mean, they would question me like, "Is this what you really? How much are you making?" So no, they weren't into it. But yeah, I paid for my own schooling, and I went to Pratt, and I studied illustration, which I thought, okay, I really want to be a painter, but commercial art is probably where I'm going to make money. Mm-hmm. So I studied illustration and graphic design.
So you still had them at the back of your mind a little bit.
Exactly.
Anybody with some sense will have their parents in the back of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. True. Depending on the parents.
But it was a useless major.
But here you are now.
And then I went to film school after that. Yeah. Again, I paid for it myself.
So your passion for film came from your mum. The content of your films, just your upbringing, or would you say this?
So I began to talk about how this particular film that I told you about is the only thing that I've actually written about my culture. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, I was really into genre. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be a genre filmmaker. And I'm also a playwright, and for some reason, with my TV work and my playwriting, everything's dark comedy.
Yeah, the last one I watched in the theatre, we were in Hybrid Islington.
Yeah.
That play was amazing. It
Oh.
was very short. It was really good.
Venus and Fur.
Venus and Fur.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I mean, well, that's where my name comes from. Love that book.
Does it?
Yeah, Black Venus.
Really?
It's one of the inspirations. Yeah.
Okay.
One of them was Venus and Furs. One of them was Josephine Baker was called the Black Venus, and a lot of kind of black erotic females would be called that. She's the Black Venus.
Yeah. So I trained at Alvin Ailey.
Oh, did
so
you?
I have
Oh,
this whole
wow.
other dance background. So Josephine Baker was a big
She's
inspiration
like
for
my
me.
idol. She's one of my idols.
Mine too, yeah.
Because it's not just her. She wasn't just a dancer. She was an activist as well.
Yeah.
And she really played with this identity, I think, in a really interesting.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. So you did dance as well.
Yeah.
Alvin Ailey's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did that?
I was always a dancer. I was
Oh my
always a
gosh.
dancer. So even when I grew up in England, I did ballet. And then
Why didn't I know this?
Yeah, he's like, it's.
I'm so confused.
Because Mandy didn't tell us, that's why.
What else don't I know about you, Mandy? What else are you withholding here? That's amazing.
I do share that on the first night of lab sometimes.
But not in your lab.
Not in my lab, you didn't.
No,
It was
no.
like, did you guys read the book?
So I'm
What's
just trying
the
to
emotional event?
think about your training then. So your training was dance, illustration, and then later film.
Yeah. So I worked with David LaChapelle very closely as a photo editor. And he went to Tisch, and he actually studied filmmaking. And I don't think he even knows this, but, just working with him led me to film as well.
Right.
And I also always looked at film as another medium in art.
Yeah, agree. Just moving pictures.
Yeah. But I did feel like I had to go to film school to really.
And would you say you're interested in movement? Is
Yes.
that like a grounding?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
very much, and I miss it. I miss being a modern dancer.
Yeah.
That's something that I think about quite a bit.
There's
A road not taken.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I feel that because I did ballet until I was 17, and then I studied Afro-Caribbean dance, and I started doing burlesque because it was just a way for me to carry on dancing, and that's why I started stripping as well, because it was a way. I was like, well, I can dance, so why don't I just shake my tits and make some money? It didn't actually turn out like that. But it is kind of how I became interested in Josephine Baker, because I just wanted to dance, and doing this allowed me to kind of explore that side of things without having to go to school or having to kind of like follow that path in a more tradition. Okay, so seeing as we're on Josephine Baker, what is it about Josephine Baker? Because I'm obsessed with her. I do a Josephine Baker tribute act. That's how obsessed I am.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I had no idea. Okay, that's amazing.
It's really good. It's really quite good.
Yeah. So
I'm
what was
dying
your
to see
what
it
was
now.
your kind of what was your what are you drawn to about her?
I think what you just, first of all, I love Paris, and I love the fact that she moved there and she started her it's where her activism began. I don't know if it began there, but it definitely took off there. And she found freedom there, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I was really drawn to that.
Yeah.
And of course her movement. I mean,
she was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was French without being French. And I think that's what's really interesting. This podcast is about patriotism in some ways, and it's about the identity that we forge within a country. For me, now that I think about it, that's another thing that's really interesting about Josephine Baker. She put her life on the line for a country that wasn't her native country. And she was French until she died. She spoke, fluent French. She was French in her mannerisms. She was French in the way she thought. And even though she'd experienced racism, around the world, as soon as she found a place that she belonged to spiritually, that was it. She would do anything. She carried records for the French resistance against the Nazis.
Her. Yeah, they adored her.
So we don't have that culture anymore, especially because I totally understand there's, artists want to speak out for the causes that are important to them. But I do think that's become very diluted in recent years. When Josephine Baker was resisting, she was resisting a very real oppressive force. Nowadays, when artists are activists, oftentimes they're saying things that they don't actually really understand.
I agree. And again, I think it goes back to this point for me of personal experience. And I think you can't represent a cause that you don't necessarily understand. So within the community, there are a multitude of experiences that exist. Yes, we know that there has been oppression that's happened. Yes, we know there was colonialism, but that is a very big and complex conversation. And if we wanted to broaden it, the transatlantic was predated by the trans-Saharan, and that's a conversation that's often omitted. And I think if we don't contextualize things properly, then things end up in a problematic scenario where we misrepresent the facts and the truths of what happens.
And I think art as well, it's not really meant to directly represent, because that's what was interesting about, Josephine Baker was making a statement about colonialism through her fashion, for example, with the banana skirt.
Yeah, the performance of black people by wearing the banana skirt.
And she's wearing a banana skirt, but she's also owning, it's like there's this whole theory about how the banana represents a phallus. And she's actually in control of her sexual, how she's been fetishized. And I think good art actually does that. It doesn't necessarily directly say, I'm black and oppressed. It says, I'm a black, it's just, I'm a person expressing myself. And these are symbols in terms of how you can interpret, my life and my environment. She didn't, and I think that's what we miss now. Everything has to be so on the nose. Everything has to be, I'm oppressed in this way, and this is the theory around my art, and this is how I'm directly combating white supremacy. Instead of just being creative.
I don't even think we know what oppression really means today. I don't think people even know what oppressed how. In the UK specifically, I don't really think people. If you ask somebody directly, what's oppressing you now? I don't think they'd be able to give you a direct and straightforward answer. They would say it's the institution.
It's institutional racism.
But which one is it? Because for black people, it was police or it's very specific and nuanced. You need to be able to name really what is oppressing you to be able to combat it, quote unquote. Otherwise, you'll always be oppressed by something if you don't know what it is. And it's not the same for every community. Jews will have a different experience, as will Asians, as with the minority within itself. It's complicated. We need to do some more self-searching.
Some self-searching. Would you say, Mandi, that oppression is a feature of your work? Or is that too prosaic of a word?
I think that I like to reinvent myself with every idea. Yeah. And not to sound pompous, at all.
I think that sounds the opposite, actually. Yeah.
But I do feel if I want to write something about oppression, then at the moment, I don't think of just one thing, and commit to that solely in terms of the body of my work. Like I said, I love genre. At the moment, I'm writing a genre, horror, a psychological horror. So I don't I don't want to just put myself in a box of creating, this or that.
I don't think you can. I think you have a very good understanding of human interaction. That's one thing I learned from the lab is
thank you.
Your ability to really, without words as well. So we have the script, as you call it, which is just text, and then there's the subtext that Mandi talks about. But what are they really trying to say? And I think you have a really great way of saying a lot without saying anything at all. And that takes a really deep understanding of human psychology, which means whatever you write, I think will be interesting, which is why I love the theatre play. So didn't actually say anything. I think the first part of it, there was nothing said. It was just like, oh my God, there's a lot happening here. But there's no words. Brilliant.
Subtext is just such an interesting concept in general, because I think subtext is what makes, being able to recognize subtext is what makes somebody self-aware or aware of their scenario. Because if even outside of an artistic context, if you're able to understand the subtext in a room, you can understand when people aren't feeling comfortable, when people are doing too much, when people are trying to like blend into the background. It's just subtext is something that is...
This is interesting. So you brought me onto something. Do we think that the subtext in a lot of the activism is really about community and belonging? It's not actually about the activism itself.
It's not about the actual things that they're saying,
This is the thing. I'm so glad you said that, because because I wanted to bring that up as well. And so what's the subtext of someone who bangs on about, that Iranians, as an example, should, that we should mind our own business, and America and Israel should mind their own business, and so what's and what are they trying to say? What's the subtext behind what they're saying?
Yeah. And what do you think the subtext is?
Most of these people are white, okay, and we talked about colonial guilt. We talked about them being in a bubble, and loving hearing the same thing in their, in their bubble. So is it to be liked?
I was going to say, is it about forgiveness?
Forgiveness or to be liked?
I think people want to be liked.
Because that's the flavor of the, so they want to be part of, and this is a bigger subject, but a lot of it has to do with social media.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And what it's done for or society, or not what it's done for society. Well, it has done a lot for society, but the negative part of social media, what it's done to society.
This is a whole other conversation, isn't it? But it's true, the way social media has influenced our interactions, the way that we seek interaction is interesting.
And we're just becoming much less intellectual. I think that's like, and it sounds like a big thing to say.
No, it's true. It's not cool to be smart anymore.
It's not cool to be smart. It's not cool to educate yourself outside of your device. Reading novels, books, papers, essays, magazines, articles. It's just people would rather get their information from TikTok or Instagram than to actually do the work. And
do you know what I think that is? I don't think there's any reward in being smart these days. Like, you see people, you hear about people going to university, getting really great degrees and coming out with no job. It's easier to be a performing, uneducated, naive person and do well than it is to be somebody who's well read.
Because then you don't overthink.
Right?
You're just doing things on a kind of reflexive basis. It's easier to perceive yourself in a role if you don't think about the depth or think about the work that it's going to take to actually make impact.
I agree with that.
And then this is another big subject, but it's how I think we're at fault as society in the way that we're viewing education or, forming education.
I agree with that. I remember and I still struggle with it to this day. This idea of being seen as too smart. I remember being too smart and always being worried about being bullied. So I would you know, I would always be the joker. I'd be in the top set,
Mm-hmm.
or I'd be pushed into I remember actually I got put into top set and I refused to go in it. I was like, I don't want to be in this classroom. Like, I'm not smart enough to be here, because it was cooler just to be an average Joe and, you know what I mean, be more likable. I'd rather be liked than be smart. And I do struggle with that. And I think there is this perception around minority, particularly maybe amongst black people. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I can't speak for other community groups, that being well educated is not, unless it's my mum who you need to go to school. Mm-hmm. My friends, you weren't going to be liked if you were too smart. That's not where the cool points were. You know, I still struggle with that, to be fair.
Yeah, and outside of that, I guess now it's not cool to have your own opinion. It's not cool to have an original thought. Yeah. It's cool to agree with the person sitting next to you.
Yeah, and I think the subtext is around being liked ultimately. It is really around that. So. I do think there's some forgiveness in the fact that most human beings just really want to be accepted amongst a community group of people. But I do think it's important to be accountable amongst that group of individuals, you know, especially if there's another group who's being harmed by the actions of another.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this was Hannah Arendt's book, The Banality of Evil, how evil is actually kind of a mundane trait in humans. The idea being that we do evil things because we just actually most people just don't think. You know, the reason why the Nazi Party managed to corrupt the minds of all of Germany is because people just weren't thinking. And, you know, most of the evil that was inflicted was just because people wanted to fit in and belong. But there is this, I think this is, because we were talking about this the other day, this is also kind of why I wonder if there's this idea of like willful ignorance almost, and an acute ignorance, because it is at that point now where people do have to take accountability for their beliefs, and they do have to take accountability for how the effect. We all have an effect. Agreed. All of us.
Agree. And I think I will say, as much as we critique education is a massive privilege.
Yeah.
And we can't take for granted in this country that you get it for free. Yeah. Whether you choose to study it and appreciate it is up to you, but you can't deny that you have access to it. Again, when I go back to Ghana, it does not dawn on me that I was able to educate myself to a level that I chose to. Many people will never get that choice, particularly as women.
Yeah.
And I think in this country, we ignore that is a privilege that you have, whether you like it or not. You can't shake the fact. It's true.
So, Mandi, if you had any advice for artists in the diaspora who are trying to make work that doesn't necessarily reflect how we're supposed to be seen, what would you say?
I think that artists need to put their arms around the idea that they come up with and keep at it and go for it and not hold back and not listen to anyone and just go for it, and like there's no tomorrow. I think it's really important to make art.
Yeah. And art that isn't beholden to any dominant narratives that might be.
100%. I don't think art should be made just to fit in a box.
Yeah.
You know, and to tick boxes. And, you know, that's a message to BFI, you know, and
preach. It's true. It's true.
And all of these big institutions a lot of institutions like the BBC, I think, are realizing now that they haven't been representing the people for a long time now. Jews are angry at the BBC. The anti-Semitism has just been
it's unbelievable.
Everybody's mad at the
off
BBC,
the chain, unbelievable. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, these are demographics that have been here for a very, very long time. You know, like in many ways, like make up part of the backbone of British society. So eventually the creative industries will crumble because they won't be representing the truth. They won't be representing people anymore. There will be a point where there's an end to a lot of garbage.
Yeah,
They've been-
exactly. And again, censorship.
Yeah, and we are really seemingly heading in that way.
But BBC, keep Match of the Day, okay? It's the best thing on TV. Okay, I'm so cognizant that we've been talking for a while. It's been a pleasure to have you, Mandy. Is there
Thank you
anything else
so
that
much.
Yeah, is there anything that you want to end on? Any words of hope?
I feel that what's happening in Iran is hope.
Yeah.
And I feel that people really need to sit up and pay attention, because you're looking at oppression. We talked about oppression. You're
Real
looking
oppression.
at massive oppression, and you're looking at a revolution happening with people who've just had enough and who are willing to put themselves, their lives at risk for hope.
That's beautiful.
I think that's a good place to end. Thank you so much, Mandi.
Thank you for having me.
Gold star, Mandy.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
That was fab. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that back. I'm so excited.
Wow.
Clap, 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 clap.
Clap to you guys.